welcome back for segment 2, part 2 of our Grand Pacific Voyage. In this segment, we're going to do 2 days in Seoul, South Korea via Busan, Jeju Island, and then 2 days at sea en route to Hong Kong. Well, if you'll recall from my last video, we were experiencing mechanical difficulties, now described by the captain as propulsion issues. So instead of making our way to Incheon as we were scheduled to do, we instead turned back towards Busan and would spend 2 more days in Busan trying to get those propulsion issues fixed. As Grand Pacific Voyage passengers, we were scheduled for 2 days in Seoul, only about 30 miles from Incheon. And we thought we might be kissing that one goodbye, but the department heads on Silversea got together and sent us by bullet train to Seoul. As we pulled into Busan, even the weather seemed happy with that idea. And so, instead of arranging for new excursions in Busan, we hopped on a bus that took us to a bullet train and our scheduled excursion, a Peninsula divided, where we would overnight in Seoul, Korea. But first, a stop for lunch at Mokjanggwang, where we would be served a delicious Korean barbecue lunch. And although a bit early for my liking, around 11, out came the beer and the barbecue. A quick look at the Bay of Busan after our lunch was finished and jumped on our bus and headed to the train station to catch our bullet train to Seoul, South Korea. And with our fellow passengers, we descended to the tracks and boarded our bullet train. And a short bus ride, and we were at our hotel, the Seoul Latte Hotel. This is a hotel that oddly, at least to me, gave off vibes of being Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. Too much gold, too much marble, and a lot of naked ladies standing around. The rooms, however, took on a much more quiet aesthetic, were comfortable, and had a great view of the urban sprawl outside and the mountains in the distance. Had just enough time to get orientated and settled in, and then it was off for our special banquet. Here's a menu. Please pause here if you want to look it over in any detail, but wait a moment and I will be showing you the individual dishes that were served. While we were dining, we had a short lecture from Mr. Park, a North Korean defector, and some traditional Korean singing and dancing. The music they used was rather distorted, so I'm just going to play a little bit in the background right now while you look at the colorful costumes. And as promised, here's the delicious food that was served to us this evening. And this is what they called the accompaniments or the accoutrements. I was particularly fond of the stir-fried anchovies. Absolutely great for drinking with soju, a spirit made from rice, grains, and sometimes sweet potatoes or potatoes. Sort of the Korean equivalent to vodka. Starters were prawns and a pine nut sauce and a sweet pumpkin porridge with red beans. One of the entrees was a melt-in-your-mouth sautéed beef short rib with seasonal vegetables. The second entree was a grilled plaice fish with gochujang sauce. For dessert, it was fresh fruit and traditional Korean rice cakes, followed by a bit of tea. Leaving the hotel and making our way on foot to Dukseogung Palace, we took a tour of the grounds by quote-unquote traditional lanterns, giving us a sort of surreal glimpse into the palace. Gyeongsu-gung Palace was first erected in 1484 and then destroyed during the Japanese invasion of Korea in 1592 to 1598, then was once again rebuilt as a palace in 1616. The Japanese once again invaded in 1910, and they opened the palace as a public park. However, through neglect, only about half of the original buildings still survive today. The palace is a bit unusual for a Korean palace in that it has attached gardens and even a forested area. It was originally the palace of Grand Prince Wosan, the older brother of the king, and only became a royal residence after all the other palaces burned down during the Imjin War with Japan. When we exited the palace grounds, we found that Seoul was a colorful and bustling sort of city with special activities, concerts and the like going on all around the palace grounds. I suppose the big heart is I Heart Seoul. Well, then it was back to the Lotte Hotel. Time to retire for the evening. Take a look outside our window for the urban night sprawl and get ready for tomorrow's activities, which would include another palace tour, among other things, and our return by bullet train to the ship. But first, a little breakfast at the Lotte Hotel. This is a big hotel, and there are 3 breakfast buffet venues included in the stay. We chose one and went with that, and found the choices good and everything well prepared and very tasty. My wife was particularly fond of the large fresh fruit buffet. So while she chose healthy things, I didn't, and before I could even snap a picture of it, somehow all that meat on my plate just disappeared. It was time to check out of the hotel, hop on our bus, and go explore Seoul a bit more before heading back to the Silver Muse. First stop this morning is Gyeongbokgung, or the Radiant Prosperity Palace. This was the main royal palace of the Joseon dynasty. Built in 1395, it is located in northern Seoul and is the largest of the 5 grand palaces built by the Joseon dynasty. Gyeongbokgung served as the home of the royal family and the seat of government. This was the main palace of the Joseon dynasty until the premises were destroyed by fire during the Imjin War, or war with the Japanese, and then was abandoned for 2 centuries. However, in the 19th century, all of the palace's 7,700 rooms were restored under the leadership of Prince Regent Hyungsun in 1867. However, unfortunately, the Japanese once again invaded, and Gyeongbok Palace was once again extensively and purposefully damaged during that occupation. And in 1915, on the pretext of holding an exhibition, more than 90% of the buildings were torn down. After that, the Japanese leveled whatever remained and built their colonial headquarters, leaving only a handful of the iconic structures surviving. Today, restoration efforts have been ongoing since 1990, with many buildings and gates restored and reconstructed in their original places. The starkness of the landscaping is purposeful and was said to be a protective measure back in the day, giving enemies nowhere to hide as they approached the palace. Restoration is ongoing, and the total area now under reconstruction is about 415,800 square meters. Reconstructions of the inner court and the Crown Prince's residence have also been completed. Today, the palace receives about 5.5 million visitors each year. some walking the ground in traditional Korean outfits that can be rented from shops surrounding the palace grounds. One of the main attractions is the changing of the guard that occurs twice a day at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., excepting Tuesdays. It is, shall we say, well attended, and I'm going to get out of the way here and let you enjoy the spectacle without me interfering with it. Our next stop was Bukchon Hanak Village. This is an area of Seoul that contains a high concentration of traditional Korean homes called Hanak. Many of the homes in the area date from the earliest 20th century or before, and in 2024 received an incredible number of 6.4 million visitors. As you can imagine, this has wreaked havoc with the actual residents of the neighborhood, and tourists who are not staying in the guest houses now are told only to visit between the hours of 10 in the morning and 5 in the afternoon, and to please keep your voices down. Next stop is what our guide was calling the Arts District. While there was some evidence that something was going on here, most of it was shopping, restaurants, and coffee houses. But it was interesting with a lot of quirky little shops and places to browse. I wanted to stop here and browse around a little bit, but no time for what I wanted. Eventually, we found our way to a street full of galleries and supposed real Korean arts and crafts. We looked around a bit, and the wife bought some of these. The sharp-eyed amongst you might notice that one is broken, and that happened between the store and getting back to the ship. We aren't sure how, since they were packed fairly well, but disappointing at best. We happily spotted this place. It was a Korean bakery and sweet shop, which we went inside and bought a bunch of things similar to this. We had the best intentions of making it all the way back to the ship with those sweets, but guess what? They didn't make it. So now it was time for lunch once more. And I'll let you take a wild guess what lunch was all about. Yes, that's right. It was all about Korean barbecue once more. Now, you get no complaints from me because it was good. I do enjoy their salads, and I do enjoy their small plates. But most of all,
you don't mind your hands being...
I enjoy the meat.
Maybe somebody will see me and they'll be famous and become a hand model. You don't mind your hands being on YouTube.
And after lunch, it was back on the bus and on to the train station. In the train stations, I noticed these vending machines, and I was curious, so I took a closer look. They're just filled with these tiny little knickknacks and doodads and toys. I'm assuming there's some either collecting going on or it's to keep the kids quiet. In either case, 3.5 hours later, we were back in Busan. And when we turned up at the ship, we were greeted by darn near everybody.
Oh, thank you.
I was just really happy that there was somebody there, and the ship had not sailed yet, as we were running a tad late. But I figured Silversea knew that they put us on that bus, they needed to get us back home. And back on board and sailing away as the sun went down, it was time for, of course, dinner. And dinner tonight would be in Kaiseki. Kaiseki is the Japanese restaurant on board, and in the evenings there is an upcharge of $40 per person. It is a quite nice sort of affair, and sort of a surf and turf thing. This is the appetizer bowl, and you can pick either beef or fish as your main ingredient. From there, it goes on to your main proteins, starting with lobster tail, moving on to black cod or sablefish, and, at least for me, the star of the show, Wagyu beef. You also get a bit of wonderful fried rice. And for dessert, you have green tea ice cream or fried ice cream. And after a bit more carousing around, it was time to retire and get ready for the next day's port of call. The next morning found us at Jeju Island, Korea's largest and southernmost island, also known as the Hawaii of South Korea. Jeju covers an area of about 708 square miles, or 1,833.2 square kilometers, and the island is about 500,000 inhabitants. The Jeju people are indigenous to the island, and it has been populated by modern humans since the early Neolithic period. Our excursion for the day was called Jeju's Natural Wonders. First stop on our tour was Seapji-Kochi, located on the east coast of Jeju Island. This area is home to a stunning, rugged coastline with interesting volcanic rock formations and has been part of many Korean movies and K-dramas. Probably most notably, it has been the set for the All-In K-drama, one of the highest rated miniseries in Korean history. Originally, it was a set designed to be a beautiful Catholic church, but later on it was converted into a kind of theme park, wedding chapel, whatever, which promptly failed. Regardless, the star of this outing was the rugged coastline and the beautiful setting in which the lighthouse resides. Looking at this, it's easy to see why the coastline here has been used for so many movies and K-dramas. We were warned we would be hiking up the side of a volcano later on that day, and we may not want to walk up to the lighthouse. Well, we ignored that advice, and I think the climb up to the lighthouse was worth it. Even the derelict building in the background adds a certain element of charm and whimsy to this particular area on the coast. Next stop was our big one for the day, the Songsan Ilchulbong volcano. Songsan Ilchulbong is also called Sunrise Peak and is a volcano on the eastern shores of Jeju Island. The mountain itself is 597 feet or 182 meters tall and has a diameter of around 2,000 feet or 600 meters. To ascend the volcano, you'll have to walk up about 540 stairs. To descend, we were told it was 640 stairs. We were told it'd take 30 to 45 minutes to ascend to the top, and longer if you're me. There is a large grassy volcanic crater at the top that is bowl-shaped and is relatively flat. You can see that crater spread out over our shoulders there. And after spending a bit of time at the top and checking out the landscapes below us, it was time to descend. And as I mentioned before, while it was only 500 stairs up, it was about 640 stairs down. Now, I think I actually counted it was about 10,000 stairs each way. Well, maybe it just felt that way. The mountain is especially popular for watching sunrises and attracts about 1.5 million visitors per year. And while I couldn't find any numbers on those that actually make it all the way to the summit, I did find the reference stating that many, quote unquote, of those 1.5 million visitors per year actually do make it all the way up. I checked my iPhone and it told me that I had walked the equivalent of 52 floors that particular day. And after posing for a picture with what the locals call a grandpa, it was time to head back to the ship. And once everybody was back on board, it was time to leave Jeju Island behind. Now, all of our mechanical issues had not been solved in Busan as had been hoped, and so we were running a bit slow still. But even though running just a little slow, we were back on schedule, more or less, and headed to Hong Kong. The next day was another day at sea en route to Hong Kong. It was also another formal, optional evening, so we got all dressed up and made our way to the Silver Society meeting. Party animal that I am, I decided to wear a lampshade as part of my formal outfit.
How you doing?
Okay, how are you doing?
So far, so good.
Yes, so far so good, you know.
After that Silver Society meeting, it was time for dinner. And dinner tonight would be in the Italian eatery La Terrazza. Stay tuned for my complete dining and drinking guide coming soon. Tonight we were treated to a new headliner, Jacob Trasick, a talented and very entertaining violinist. Another day at sea en route to Hong Kong brought us a bit of rock and rolling and musical barware. And an Asian-themed luncheon for the Grand Pacific Voyagers, featuring a whole Filipino pig, Asian salads and greens, fried rice and other Asian fare, along with many different Asian-style desserts, even chocolate dragons. We occupied ourselves through the day and the evening, capping it off with a trip to the Panorama Lounge for a little raspberry and rosé, a specialty drink of the Panorama Lounge. From there, it was off to bed and get ready for our next port of call, Hong Kong, China. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell to be kept up to date with new releases. And stay tuned for more as we limp into Hong Kong, still hoping to get those darn propulsion issues 100% fixed and make our next stop in Vietnam. Spoiler alert, we didn't, and we didn't. But that's all for now, so stay tuned, and as always, happy and safe travels from T's Cruise and Travel Muse.